I'm Ian Rush and you're watching the Redmen TV.
Membership that we've got, it's hard to control the doom mongers.
Yeah,
sometimes
absolutely.
we have to lock down the site just because it's so depressing, just to get rid of them. But if we've managed to get rid of them and we have the positives come through, it'd be really nice to kind of give them a little bit of sunshine or whatever. But specifically with the transfer window, just have you had any assurances at all that January would be different?
I think I've had long conversations with the owners, and I think what I've found since I first came into here was that there's been a real sense of instability at the club for a few years. I found it here. I came to Millwood, and I'd sensed that the club for maybe a few years, speaking to individual people, that there was a real sense of insecurity, really, and what it needed was stability. There's obviously a lot has gone on in those few years. So I've come into here to look to try and stabilise. There's a lot of work to do in terms of the playing squad, and I've been brought in to implement a vision. Otherwise there was no point in me being here. You know, I was brought in because I'd worked a certain way, and obviously hope to implement that over a period of time. But I've got to say the owners have been very honest and very upfront right from the off. Of course, it didn't quite go to plan how we'd wanted the window, but certainly going forward, there's been a great learning taking place over the course of the summer. There's a lot of work to do in terms of trimming the squad. Every manager always wants more players, but the reality is, in terms of where the club was at, there needed to be work done, a little bit of surgery done in the squad. We finished up where we were at, and then now it's the chance, really. Now we've got to really move forward as a football club and as a whole, and really have the one club mentality. Like I said, a manager always wants more players, always wants more. But I understood there had to be some sort of surgery in the squad, or else, you know, for some of the wages here, it's absolutely astronomical in terms of value and worth. And like as I said, that needed to be looked at. But certainly what it'll do is it'll give me the chance to now look at some young players who maybe not, or wouldn't have been given the chance before. But I think that they now come into the fore now. And I think if I think of Liverpool, it certainly is one of those clubs that loves their young players. And I think what we're going to see, hopefully over the course of the next 3 to 4 months, is do we have enough good young players to come in? And then obviously that'll then bring us through into January, and certainly we can assess it from there. But I genuinely believe, and it was the reason why I came here, was that I believed that I came here first and foremost because of the club, the history of the club. You know, I could have stayed in my comfortable chair in South Wales, having the first Welsh team, got promoted, and been there for a number of years. For me, I want to work at a club that was world class and at the very, very top. I had some choices to make in this summer because I could have went elsewhere. But I genuinely came here first and foremost because of the owners, because I felt a real genuine honesty in their approach to it, and then how they want to go forward with the football club. I knew there was going to be a wee bit of pain short term. I understood that. But hopefully for the longer term gain, this is what we would have to go through.
So you think it's going to force the players that we've got now to step up? Whereas before we had a larger squad then, but now the other players in the squad and the youth players,
they have to.
They've got to step up now.
They have to. Absolutely. We're in a position where we've got 25 minimum games now between now and in January. So it's going to be, we're going to be stretched to the limit. But this is the idea of why they're here. You know, we now need to people, you know, I've spoken to the players, if you get little niggles or little injuries, you've got to man up. You've got to man up, and you've got to, you know, we've got to come together and be really strong. But it's one of the things I would say is that the majority of this group coming in, I think what I've got here is a platform of hard work and integrity. The group have been absolutely fantastic. Every day, working well, working hard. I said before that we wanted help, but that'll hopefully come. And then, but like I said, it's important we all come together as supporters, players, management, and really sort of push forward. Pleasure. Yeah,
Thanks.
pleasure.
Basically, answer my question. No, talk about the tactics and the learning curve. Just two questions really. I mean, first, leading on from Serge, the January transfer window. Now, obviously, it's going to be how difficult to envisage that could be, because obviously you're going to be bringing players in. It's not going to be a short-term fix. It's going to be players that you'd want long-term, and obviously with European competition, cup ties, and one thing and the other. So, I mean, how difficult do you think it will be to bring the right kind of player in January?
January is always a difficult month anyway. Even if however you're doing, sometimes it's very, very difficult to get the best players in January. Because if a team's doing well, they're not going to be so keen to lose a squad player. And they want to keep good players. But it's something that we'll have to look at, of course. And now, hopefully, like this month, our scouting team comes together, and there'll be a lot of great work will go on between now and then in relation to finding the targets, and importantly, finding the profile that's going to fit into our way going forward. Because there's no point in spending absolute millions and fortunes on players if they can't play football. So it's it's important that the profile of the player fits into how we're going to play going forward, and between now and then we're going to have to be creative because of our limited players up front. You know, we're going to have to be have to find a different solution. There might have to be an intermediary way of working that allows us to get results, but also allows us to keep the principles going in terms of what I've tried to establish so far.
Do you feel that, given what went on last week, it's like in the long run it could be beneficial, because, as you said, you're going to be bringing players in who you might not have considered, give the youngsters a couple of chances, so it may, in the future, actually strengthen what you're doing? And also on the tactics, how long do you feel, because you've got a very specific way of playing, the learning curve, how long do you think that would take to implement, and are you happy with how the squad have adapted to it so far? Yeah,
I think it runs twofold. I understand you people, you need to see your team winning. That's the reality. But also the other reason I came to here was because it wasn't just about winning for Liverpool. Liverpool Football Club has been about the style, and there's a way to win games. So the balance is really trying to run that, alongside each other. It takes a bit of time, and I'm not crying for time, because I understand you people, you need results, and you want to see improvement. But I think the more we work together, the more we get the ideas, the more we get the types of players that fit this way of working, then you'll see it then change very quickly. When as I said, I'll give the example. I arrived at Swansea, and they had the lowest amount of goals. The team that scored the least amount of goals, the third, I think it was 40 goals they had scored. So they had a way of playing, but it was maybe a defensive way of playing. But I realised we needed maybe 3-4 players to give us more penetration, and to give us something else in the game to tactically push us higher up the pitch and be offensive and creative. And that kicked in after a number of months, But it was still about getting the balance, because at home we were brilliant. Away from home, it was a little bit too open. And when I assessed and was looking at it, I had near enough 6 wingers in the team, because the front 3 were all wingers, and actually the 3 midfield players were all transferred wingers. So it was about balance, and that's what I'm looking at the moment. How can we be a threat going forward? How can we be more creative up that top end of the field? But also, it's important about being secure and getting the balance behind that, so you don't concede. And your second point, in terms of, I think the longer run, it will. I always believe that it's for a reason, and the reason will be that maybe boys like Soso And boys like that will maybe get an opportunity now. I think if you look throughout European football, and in particular in the Premier League, statistically, under 21 players playing is very, very, very small in terms of percentage. I think last year in my team I had a number of under 21 players playing. But if you look throughout a lot of the other teams, there was very, very few. Now what this will do is this is going to allow guys to stand up to the plate. You cry for an opportunity, you actually might now get an opportunity. So, and then you've got to take it. Then you've got to take it. But like young Raheem, you know, been fantastic. You know, I came in here early on, I heard all this bits and pieces about Raheem Sterling. You know, I watched him and early on I thought, okay, be interesting. And I get into him a couple of times, you know, come on my friend, blah, blah, blah. But I've got to say his response has been fantastic. And he's a kid now that he is responsible, tactically getting better, and he has a threat on the field. So he's going to grow, I believe, and I'm trying to keep him out of the media, trying to look after him and make sure he stays focused and composed. And then Liverpool is a player for the future. And I think there'll be hopefully a number of boys like that can now step up given the opportunity.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Obviously, you've got people in the main stand moaning why is Pepe Reina taking short goal kicks, and then you've got people on forums saying why aren't Liverpool throwing masses of cash at transfer problems, so to speak. Do you think it's very much a case with you're instilling a new system and with FFP coming in that in many respects we have to sort of learn a new way of looking at what's happening at the football club?
Yeah, I think the first one in terms of the tactical element of the game, I've never been one. I don't enjoy the percentage of. There is sometimes you've got to kick it longer. You've got to go that little bit longer. I've always walked along the statistic that if you can dominate the game with the ball, you have a 79% chance of winning a game of football. So nearly, if you're better than the other team with the ball, you've got an 8 out of 10 chance nearly of winning the game. So, and that's what that does. The ability to play out from behind. Lots of teams now that maybe, as I said, will drop deep and they have lots of bodies behind the ball. If you just kick it straight up the middle of the field, you normally go into the strength of what that team might be, which could be the centre halves, 6'5". They just head it right back down your throat again, and then you're defending. So for me, that ability to build the game is important, but not all the time, because what we'll do is we'll come up against teams that will push right onto us, and then the tactic has to be slightly different, where you've then got to go a little bit longer in your build up and hit maybe the second or the third line of pass. But also for me, this is what Liverpool's about. Liverpool's a team that build their way through the phases, you know, and it's certainly how I work. I like the teams to control the game from behind, but what we'll become better at is doing it quicker. Probably needs to be a bit quicker in the tempo, and that'll come once the methods are more installed with the players. The second point, I think every club is working towards the financial fair play. They know what's coming upon them, and like I say, maybe indirectly this is something that can help us with our future going forward.
It doesn't happen very often, but I think in recent years we've maybe cast some slightly jealous glances across Stanley Park, as it doesn't happen very often, but with some of the youth players that have come through, and obviously you've talked already about how you're going to give greater opportunities to some of the youngsters at Liverpool. Do you think, although there might be a slight disappointment at not bolstering the squad in the window as much as you would have liked, for future generations it could send a positive message to say, well, hang on, you know, you've got a far better chance of breaking through in the first team at Liverpool?
Yeah, and that's the message that I want to get out. You know, I think I've done all my short career as a manager. I have an inherent belief in young players, but not blindly. They have to have the talent and the personality. And I think that if you see the clubs that do give those young players an opportunity, it's normally clubs where the manager has an inherent belief in them, or financially it's forced upon them. So for me, it works both ways really. I believe that if a young player will run through a barbed wire fence for you. An older player will look for the hole in the fence. Yeah, he'll try and get his way through it some way, but the young player will fight for you. But it's about balance. So I always believe your young players are only as good as your senior players. And I look at Jimmy Carragher here. I said in the training the other day, listen, he's 34 years of age now, Jimmy, right? But his attitude, he's been doing this for 18 years, and his attitude the other day in training was still the very best. So if a young player is going to overtake these sorts of players, not only do they have to have the talent, they have to have the attitude, because there's no good saying, I'll show you what I'm like if I can get 15 or 20 minutes on the pitch. You have to show me what you're like every single day of your life to fight for the shirt, not just whether you're going to get 15 minutes on a Saturday or Sunday or a Thursday. So, but I think that, like I say, for me, I'll always look towards young players, but I can't neglect that the experienced ones and senior ones, because they're very important.
Okay, thank you.
Pleasure.
And further development. It's been a long while since we've had players coming through from the academy on any regular basis that's made the first team. Part of that, I think, has been the fact that below the first team there's not actually been competitive football for people to play in, as there was when people like Gerrard was in what was the Pontins League team.
Yeah.
And before him, Fowler, Owen and the likes, and of course Carragher. So what will be the philosophy now in competitions such as the FA Youth Cup, the Under-21 Reserve League, or whatever you want to call it, it's now called Development League, and of course the Next Generation Cup? I don't think we've ever been thrown in this competitive edge that, should we just have to say, that Manchester United have always had, which is you're playing for Manchester United, you go out there and you play for that. That's what you're playing for. Our team's always looked as if that's not been part of their makeup. And one game last year that stands out in my mind was the Youth Cup game at your old club Swansea, whereas we seem to take it as a game. Swansea took it as important.
Yeah, it works. I've been fortunate enough to be at both levels really, because I was a youth team coach in the Reserve Cup at Chelsea. I was also the academy director at Reading. The way the world is that whenever you play against the big club, that is your cup final. So for the kids at Swansea, when they were playing against Liverpool, that was like the FA Youth Cup final. It was a massive game. But you're absolutely right. I think it's important, and hope in my time here, it's what I would want to install, that wherever you play, whatever team is out there, when it's Liverpool, everyone wants to beat you, and you have to defend the shirt for your life. For your life. So that's a mindset, and that's a mentality that happens over a number of years. When you've got consistency and when you have success, and that's important. I think you're absolutely right. I think there's always been that void between 18 and 21 in this country, where our talented players come through, and then where do they go when they arrive at 18 and they're not quite ready for the first team? The Premier League has been brilliant in terms of the marketing and the business side, but actually for a lot of British players, it's been heaven for a lot of teams, but for a lot of young players it's been hell, because they can't get the opportunity, and they've had to then go out on a loan period somewhere to show that they can play, because it's competitive, and then maybe they come back in and hopefully try and get into the first team. The pressures now on managers is phenomenal, which also can stop a young player being put in. Because if a manager thinks his job, he's got to win something, or he's got to get in the Champions League, if he's got someone who's got experience against a young player who's shown potential, lots of managers will opt for that seniority because this player's maybe already done it. So it comes from security. You know, the Man Uniteds, as you mentioned, the Arsenals of the world, it's no coincidence that those managers have been there for a long time. So they then have more comfort in their role, more security, so they can then use those competitions like what was the Carling Cup and that to be, you know, platforms really for the young players to grow. But for us, certainly, youth team, reserve, first team, for the kids, every game is important. And like I said, it all leads towards the first team, hopefully one day.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, mate.